All right, we're all here, board members, Corey, building inspector, is Lisa here? There we are. Hi, there's Lisa. All right. Good evening and welcome to the August 17th, 2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, where we will hear various items. The first item is Mary Lee Ireland at 2 Mason Drive. And the second is Appeal 2232, special use permits for Prime. Somebody here for the Mary Lee Ireland application. Mary, you're muted. I think I have to hit space bar or something.
Okay.
Hello? Hi, Mary.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Mary. Are you on your phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you don't have a computer. That's okay, right? You can't see anything. Right? That's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay with us. All right, Mary, good evening. You're here because you have a shed that you built back in 2012 that it turns out is 2 feet from the rear property line, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And I see from your application that before you built the shed, you discussed it with your neighbors.
Yes.
Nobody had an objection.
No.
Right. And you built the shed and with the rodent invasion protection.
Exactly.
And right. And it's been there since 2012. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that was 8 years ago, and included in that was a discussion with Ms. Patricia Ducat of 125 Prospect.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, she was the sole resident. And later on, her son Scott moved into the house in 2015, some 5 years ago.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's all correct.
All right, great. So I don't know if you would watch the pre-meeting at all that we had at 6:30 and zoomed into that, but we did discuss it. I'm going to open it to the board for questions. Frankly, it's been like that for a while. Joe, do we have any correspondence?
We do not have any correspondence, no.
Okay. So Mary, we don't have any correspondence on file or as part of the record that indicates any issue with anybody having with your shed. And we consider what's part of the record.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. So I'm going to open it up to the board to see if they have any questions about the shed. I mean, I guess my feeling is that when we discussed this, it's been there for 8 years. Anybody that might have had an issue with it would have known that within the past 8 years. So, but I'm going to open it to the board. Does anybody on the board have any questions or comments regarding Mary Ireland?
I'd like to confirm why we are addressing this issue now. What is the impetus for this coming to us right now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay, so one of our inspectors got a complaint from a neighbor next door that they discovered the shed too close to their property line, wondered how it happened. We looked into it, didn't see that there was ever a permit for it or a variance. There's no statute of limitations on these things, and it did not predate our zoning ordinance, so it's not considered a pre-existing non-conforming condition. So we've dealt with these types of things a few times in the past, and it's just something we need to look at now.
So
Was
in
it
essence, it's the city that's requesting this be addressed, or was the neighbor pushing for it to be addressed?
You know, I actually don't know all the details on that, but when my inspector came to me, I said, we need to address this. So it was me who told him that we needed to get this done.
Okay.
So the quote complaint was possibly more, how did this happen? And not necessarily, I don't like it, or anything along those lines, since we don't have any written correspondence from that neighbor.
Yeah, it was more or less like that. I mean, I have to presume that that's the way it was, because it actually didn't get to me. This person didn't speak to me. So whatever he was told, I think satisfied him to that degree, but it didn't answer the question of what we do about the shed. And the answer is we need to get it approved or denied and deal with it.
Now, in light of, and don't take this the wrong way, the backlog at the building inspector's office, did letters or postcards go out to the neighbors as usual, so the person knew it was going to be on the agenda?
Don't take that the wrong way, huh? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we got everything. Everything got out in time. It was advertised in the paper properly, and we got the posting cards out. Yeah.
Okay, then we're clean.
Any other questions? Okay, so Mary, I mean, I guess one of the things we talked about in the pre-meeting is the fact that when people acquire property next to another neighbor, they look at the property and say, oh, I like this place. Oh, well, that might be too close, or I can see their porch, or their fence is too tall or not tall enough, or whatever. But they certainly see it, and obviously this didn't come up for quite a while. What I'm gonna ask the board now to do is to look at the seeker, which is an environmental report, Mary, that we have to vote on first. Whether or not there's a negative impact from your shed, an adverse environmental impact. And what I do notice, which almost everybody gets wrong, is in question number 2, it says, does the proposed action require a permit, approval, or funding from any other governmental agency? If yes, list them in the permit or approval. You have no. The answer is yes, and you need a variance from the ZBA, and you need a permit from the building inspector. Now, they may not require it because it was done so long ago. That's up to them. But you absolutely, one of the things you need is a variance. Other than that, I don't believe this shed has anything else in this seeker that needs to be examined. I'm looking for a motion on the seeker regarding my ability to fill out questions 1 through 11 and sign no adverse environmental, no little impact.
We need a couple of questions completed first.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss them?
Question 1, there's no answer, which I believe would be obviously no.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Scott. Yeah, I only look at the one I know about.
Question 6, I would say would be yes.
Yeah.
Question 8C, yes. And 14, I would assume suburban.
Okay.
You didn't fill out number 1.
Any other questions on the seeker? I'm looking for a motion then.
I'll make a motion in regards to appeal 2247. After review of the short environmental assessment form, part 1, that the questions in part 2, questions 1 through 11, be checked. No or small impact may occur. And as a result of that, that the chair check in part 3, the box that we've determined that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts.
Seconded by Megan.
Oh, I guess.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, roll call. Megan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes,
Ellie,
Yes.
Ron, yes. So that is, that takes care of the seeker. If not, if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion regarding the variance for this appeal. Pardon me. For appeal number 2247 for Mary Lee Ireland, 2 Mason Drive.
Megan?
Ron,
Yes,
did you open it to the public or check on that?
I apologize, you're right. Is there, I need to open this to the public. Is anybody in the public, do we have any hands raised? Or anybody that wants to make a comment?
No, me too. Usually.
Ethan or Kyle, do you see any hands raised?
See no hands.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I'm going to close the public hearing then. Megan?
Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve appeal number 2247 for Mary Lee Ireland at 2 Mason Drive to approve her Class B area variance request for the accessory structure within 5 feet of the rear lot line.
Thank you. Could you amend it? Could you amend it to say approximately 2 feet from the rear lot line?
Sure. Do I need to say the whole thing over again?
No, just say that, just amend it to say that.
Okay.
You can say I amended it.
Okay. I
Sorry.
amend my motion to say approximately 2 feet from the property line.
I second that.
Okay. Seconded by Kelly and her dog.
Nice job, Megan.
All right. Now we're going to chat with who, Joe or Lisa?
Lisa,
All right. So a yes vote is to approve.
Didn't we do that? They made the motion. No. I'm not aware of all the Queensberry rules.
Okay. I've got Megan, yes.
Yes.
Elizabeth, yes.
Yes.
Scott, yes.
you were muted, Scott.
yes,
And Kelly, yes.
Yes.
And what about me?
Oh, there you are. Ron, yes. Sorry.
Yes. Okay, Mary,
Yeah,
you're all set. You're approved for your variance. Talk to Joe at the building inspector's office. see if he needs you to get any kind of permit. I wouldn't know what you would get, but
Okay, thank you
All
all
right.
so much. You guys have a good night.
you too. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. I've had enough. Everybody ready to go home? Yeah. Oh, wait, we're all home already, just about. Okay. We are ready to start Prime. So you guys do what you gotta do. Hi, Charlie.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
couple-
Well, hi, Deb.
Yep, looks like I was muted. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Boy, you're getting them. They're coming in now.
So. Looks like we have everyone, I believe.
Okay. How many of you are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, counting. Are there 6 of you?
Yep, counting
That's-
myself, there's 6 from Prime.
Great. Okay. You don't have us outnumbered this month. That's good. Okay. Good evening. I'm not sure what everybody's expecting. We have, as you know, we got your revised information the 10th. I think some of us have not been able to fully review it. So what we're really looking for this evening is to get some information and understand it. I have some questions certainly about different stuff, but to understand your plan and what you're proposing, see if we have any suggestions about it or questions. We do have, I'm sure you assume this, but if not, we don't see how we're going to be doing any voting this evening on A, our findings, or B, any of the actions. What we'd like to do is work towards understanding what you're proposing so that if we have questions about it or concerns, we can voice them subsequently so that you can be prepared to come back and see us again with answers, etc. But I think that what we're looking for now is for you to explain what you've done, A, and answer some questions as they develop this evening. Is that about what you thought?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And additionally, I did have a chance to speak with Corey this afternoon. So before we do get into that, I just kind of wanted to go over some process-wise.
Great.
Where we see things, where the city council is with things. And I think that's appropriate to give that board that timeline that they were looking for, and then also understand the timeline that we might be looking for. So when you're ready, I can start off. You just let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Corey has mentioned some of that, so go right ahead.
Sure. So in case anyone forgot, and for members of the public watching, Charlie Gottlieb from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah, Land Use Council for Prime Plattsburgh. Here this evening, we have Turner Bradford, project engineer, Steve McKenzie, project architect, Dean DeVito, and Deb Osterhout from Prime as well. I think the last time I was before this board was back in June. And I do believe we made some progress at that meeting because we narrowed down some concerns and issues. And we got a chance to hear from each of the board members as to what their individual concerns were, which was very helpful. So the team went back, redesigned the project, and I think, in a great way to mitigate those concerns, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, to the maximum extent practicable. That the developer is able to mitigate concerns of a board, this board, as well as the planning board, while still making sure the project is able to succeed. I won't talk about any of those changes in detail. I'll leave that to Turner and to Steve. What I want to talk about is what is the impact of these project changes on the secret process, and what is the impact of these project changes on the special use permit process. One thing that we do think is achievable in a process that we've laid out is to hold another public hearing first and foremost. And we think that should be done at a special meeting before your next September meeting. That way, as we've done in the past, it's just prime and the public has one meeting to themselves, and no one has to wait until 12:30 at night and so forth and so on. And then after that, continue and hopefully develop the findings statement for approval, or however the board may see it appropriate at the actual September meeting, and maybe even a vote on the special use permit there. That is a time frame we think is achievable. Hopefully you think it's achievable as well after you hear our presentation this evening. As far as SECRA goes, right, how do we take these project changes, incorporate them into your findings statement? What is the city council going to do with these changes, and so forth? The SECRA regulations expect projects to change as they go through the process, right? That's the whole idea. We identify potential impacts and we mitigate them to the maximum extent practicable. Those changes are okay so long as those changes do not result in a significant environmental impact that this board feels as though has not been mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. Those changes must be discussed and deliberated in an open forum, which we are doing right now and will do in an additional public hearing. These project changes, the same package has been delivered to the city council. They are the lead agency here. Chazen, who is the city council's planning and engineering consultant who did the GEIS and did their finding statement, is currently in the process of looking over our project changes and is making a determination or an opinion for the city council whether or not in their eyes the project changes mitigate concerns, or do they, what type of environmental impact do they have? If there's no environmental impact of these changes and they are seen as mitigating, either or, then there would not be a need for what's known as a supplemental generic environmental impact statement. And all the city council would have to do in that instance is amend their finding statement to state that. It would state, these are how the project has changed throughout the SECRA process. We still find as though there are no significant environmental impacts. This board's role is really no different. As you continue to go forward with your finding statement, you'll identify the changes that have been made, and you will identify, if you wish or if you feel appropriate, whether or not those changes are mitigating and whether or not those changes result in no environmental impact. Those are all things we can discuss here tonight and at subsequent meetings. One thing I would like to point out, and I recall in the prior meetings as we went through the finding statement, and this is just something I offer up for the board to consider, is that the finding statement is a legal document at the end of the day that is based on the environmental impact statement and the SECRA record. So, to the extent that this board feels it's appropriate to be as efficient as possible, one of the processes I've seen used quite often, and I use when I represent municipalities, would be to have a deliberation of each of those categories of the finding statement, and then charge Corey with the responsibility of synthesizing what the board feels in a finding statement, because it is a legal document. Whether or not that legal document gets challenged, that's a question that may be answered later. Instead of this board trying to navigate it its own kind of through the process. That might help things run a little smoother. It's just part of the process that I would offer up and suggest. Now, the project changes that we see are related to, you've seen the building height changes. We have setback changes, design changes, architectural changes, and I won't get into that. One of the things I will note, and at the very end of that 300-page submission, there was a letter from my office that talks about the environmental impacts of COVID-19. I know Mr. Shackner, who is the city's secret counsel, addressed this at a meeting, at a planning board meeting, and talked about to what extent does this board have to address the economic impacts of COVID-19. So in that letter, I set forth that when you have such a speculative economic impact, there is no requirement, because it can't be assessed. Now, that being said, right, that's the legal requirement, but let's practically take a look at this. Earlier in the spring, Prime provided information as to how they feel as though COVID-19 is going to impact the project as they, live and breathe the real estate market on a daily basis. In addition, and Dean can elaborate on this a little later, the design of the project has been done trying to mitigate the COVID-19 impact. One of the things that it was apparent that this board was worried about was the ability to attract commercial tenants. Prime has continued to seek commercial tenants for this building and has worked with commercial tenants for this building. And that is part of the change. No commercial tenants are on board. Everything's completely speculative, as I mentioned before, but the project is being designed in a manner that would attract commercial tenants that are interested in space. So to the extent we are able to address COVID-19 economic impacts, we submit that we have. Now, related to the special use permitting process, so how do these changes impact the special use permits? First and foremost, we submit that a new public hearing should be had. Of course, let's hear what the public has to say about the redesign and so forth. We would submit that public hearing need only be one meeting, as we've done in the past, to see kind of what are the concerns, what is the support that may be out there. In the past, we've provided special use permit narratives, noting that we do meet the very general special use permit standards that this board is required to assess in granting the permits. And because these changes are mitigating, none of those special use permit standards have really been adversely affected. So things related to community character and so forth, Steve has done an excellent job of listening to this board, to the planning board, changing the architecture to try to make sure things are more sympathetic and compatible with the downtown area. Building height has changed, things of that nature. So when it's time to reassess those in any resolution or deliberation, we submit that the changes that have been made further demonstrate compliance with the special use standards. And if the board has any questions on that, happy to answer them. So enough from me. I'm sure everyone here has missed my voice. I will hand it over to Turner now. And Turner, maybe you can just walk through some of the general site plan changes that have occurred. And then we'll kick it over to Steve to talk a little bit about the architecture.
Yeah, hold on. Before we do that, I just want to sort of keep the pace of this meeting a little less quick in one sense, so that there is not this overwhelming amount of constant barrage of information that I want to take. I want to react a little bit, Charlie, to what you said, and I thought it was very good. I do understand about the public hearing. We're gonna have to look and see what we can do about scheduling that. Whether or not it can happen before September or has to happen in September. The findings are an important part of what we're doing, and I need to understand a little better, and I'm not asking for the information right this minute, and I'll talk to Corey some, frankly, about, and I've been working on these findings, and as have we all, but I'm trying to write them with Corey's guidance. How this, whatever becomes your final plan, and I don't believe this is quite the final one, it's closer, how that impacts that. We'll need to understand that process and how long they're going to take. I'm talking about the council, the consultants, and again, we need to see a final thing that we're then going to react to. And I think there are some ways you're right that you've mitigated some stuff, and I think that part of this plan probably adds some, especially with parking, adds some concerns. But we'll talk about that as we get to the particulars. I just wanted to slow it down so it wasn't just a barrage of prime people, one right after the other. That's why I jumped in. So now I'm ready, okay, but I think you did fine, and I'm ready for Turner now.
So actually,
right.
one quick comment. One of the things I thought worked so well in the June meeting is that after we had a presentation, we heard individually from each board member as to their feelings on the project. And that helped us gain a consensus on how we feel as though the secret findings should go, how we feel as though the project is going. So I think it would be a good idea to conclude each meeting kind of with that individual consensus, because it's the majority of the board here that's important for crafting the finding statement and the ultimate decision. So I just thought that was really helpful at the last meeting, and it'd be great to hear it again.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Go ahead, Turner.
Yeah, I guess that's so thank you, Turner Bradford, McFarland Johnson, engineer for Prime. Thank you, Charlie. And I think that was a really good transition, because at the end of the last meeting, hearing everyone's concerns, I think we came away with some concerns that we felt we could mitigate. And so we went through and we made a bunch of changes to mitigate those concerns. And really the three main concerns that we feel we were able to mitigate were the setbacks, the potential pedestrian conflict with automobiles at the garage entrance, and the first floor residential space. So the project itself is substantially the same, right? It's still a U-shaped building on the north side of the site with a surface lot and the former farmers market building pathway through the middle. It should look very familiar. The big change was made to the building. So our goal was to meet the 15-foot setback on all sides. Really, obviously, the south is taken care of, but the north, east, and west. And so the building was reconfigured and reshaped a little bit so that we have at least 15 feet from Bridge, Durkee, and the property line along the Riverwalk. The southern face of the building remains in the same space.
Are we able to pull up a site plan so that maybe Turner can hide it, or so members of the public would be able to see it?
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see along Bridge Street on the north face, now there's a pretty consistent just over 15-foot setback from the property line all along that face of that building. Along Durkee Street, there's, I believe, a minimum of 19-foot setback to the property line, and still, I believe, a minimum of 10-foot setback to what could potentially be parking along Durkee Street, depending what gets designed there. And then along the Riverwalk, It's now 15 feet from the property line, really opening up that space. So this opens up, obviously, pedestrian walkways, open space, visually, spatially, along all three of those areas. The second item we were able to mitigate was there was a lot of concern about pedestrian auto conflict potentially at the garage entrance, which was located on Bridge Street in the northeast corner of the building. So what we did, and this is a little bit of a combination of both mitigating that conflict as well as the next one, first floor residential, we got rid of the garage entrance into the basement. We're still going to have a basement garage. We just combined the two entrances to the courtyard and the garage and moved it farther south down the line of the building so that the southern wing of the building is parking on the first floor with the same building as before above that. So residential on the second, third as you go up above that, but on the first floor is open air parking that as you drive south towards the river and turn north, you would enter the garage at that point and head under the first floor space there. So this did a couple of things. Obviously, it removes the garage entrance from Bridge Street, which was a busier street, eliminates traffic concerns there. It combines the two entrances into one and moves it farther away from the intersection of Bridge and Durkee, also eliminating any potential traffic impacts at that location as well. And then being located where it is now, it's much more open, and the drivers coming in or out, have pretty clear sight lines in both directions, as do the pedestrians. Another item we were able to incorporate when we made that change was relocating the loading dock into the building at that location and removing it from the surface lot. And then, as I previously mentioned, we eliminated the first floor residential along the southern wing of the building, and along the northern wing of the building really limited how far that went to the west, where, as we've discussed in the past, it's more at grade with Bridge Street, really limit that to where the grade of Bridge Street is below the first floor elevation. Essentially attempting to eliminate the de facto first floor residential. With that, the first floor residential entrance did get relocated. It's now, there are two entrances. One is along a covered walkway along the north face of the building. That'll be into the residential lobby. And the other one is we've added a residential lobby in what is the basement. So you can enter the residential space from the Riverwalk area. And then one final change we made, which as we were going through all this, we just thought was a benefit to the project, was the surface lot. When we were looking at removing the loading dock, we also moved it farther to the east. So the layout of the loading dock, layout of the surface lot other than the loading dock is the same, but the entire thing shifted farther east, closer to the river, and that opened up sidewalk and open space along Durkee Street. So I believe that's a minimum of a 10-foot sidewalk along Durkee Street now. So all of this did a bunch of things. It reduced the building footprint to less than it was before. Conversely, it then opened up open space, made the open space and the green space on the lot both go up. And we were also able to increase parking. So with the elimination of the loading dock and the reconfiguration of the basement garage, we're able to get a couple more parking spaces. In that submission, we had a summary letter. I can quickly roll through some of the stats if you'd like. The residential units went down from 115 to 104. The bedrooms went down from 182 to 176. The commercial space went up a little bit from 13,400 to 17,900. That was largely to pulling back the residential along that first floor, opened up more commercial space. The setbacks went from 3.5 feet on the north side to just over 15 feet. On the south side, they remain the same. On the east side, they went from 4 feet to just over 15 feet. And on the west side, they went from 9 feet to 19 feet. The open space went from 22,100 and change to 22,900 and change. And the parking went up from 286 to 290. The other thing I'll add about the parking is that we did incorporate compact and subcompact spaces, not quite up to the allowable amount, but we did incorporate those to get that parking number up. And just to quickly mention, the 339 pages that were submitted. So, I think the bulk of it and the important part is this set of site plans, the 24 pages of the site plan application. We also updated the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, to incorporate the changes primarily to the building. The changes to the SWIP were quite small, as essentially the drainage all remained the same. It's just a couple of drainage areas changed with the change of the size of the building. We were able to update building elevations and renderings. Those were submitted. And then we reached back out to fire, police, and public utilities for will serve communications. And what we had at the time of submission were included. And then there was a letter from Charlie that pretty well a synopsis of the explanation he gave at the beginning of the meeting. The other changes that were made as mitigations to comments were largely on the building itself, the materials that were chosen. And Steve, if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you to explain those changes.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Steve McKenzie. Good
I'm on the
evening.
phone.
I know the feeling, Ron. Can someone pull up the rendering, the updated version, looking at it from the corner of Durkee and Bridge? Whoever's manning the controls there.
Yeah, we're working on it. Give us a minute.
Okay. In essence, the change was where we had the clapboard siding that was hardy panel before. We changed that to the Stowe Creative Brick product. That'll look like brick. On the upper levels, that's essentially the change. Same for the mezzanine level, which some think of you as the 5th level. And Ron, you were on the money in that regard. We are going to use the stucco finish for the same Stowe product on that level. And otherwise, with the change in terms of the location of the entry for the housing component, really the primary entries on the east end of the north wing, as Turner touched on at the site plan. And that's in essence going to have a 2-story lobby connecting both entries on the 2 levels. It also actually has a 3rd entry directly from the parking level on the basement level, which I think is where the majority of the residents certainly are gonna come and go. So we think that's gonna be an added convenience. And the other benefit also is activating the Riverwalk with the entry to the housing facing east. We think that's going to be a real bonus in terms of enhancing more pedestrian activity in that part of the campus or that part of the site. And if we ever get the rendering up, you can see more directly what I'm talking about in terms of materials. And beyond that, we really shrank the building footprint in all directions. We had to accommodate the 15-foot setback on the 3 sides. So this is the current view. Otherwise, we still have in mind for the spandrel areas, the gray areas, the hardy product, and a smooth finish for the box bay, same for the balcony areas. And in the ground level is going to be the stone veneer. We're looking at a Glengarry product, which looks very similar to the color shown on the 3D view here. And again, you can see on the top floor, the mezzanine level where we have the stucco finish on the same stow product. So really there are 3 stow products we're looking at, which, as I mentioned before, is a great product from an energy code standpoint. It's good in that it combines both, excuse me, the technical as well as the energy requirements for a building, knowing that now we have to more or less blanket the building with 3 inches of rigid. It's actually a really good balance of those kinds of requirements for how you approach building design these days. I think otherwise, same approach in terms of roof terraces off the mezzanine level or the 5th floor. And again, providing balconies for all the units so they have access to both fresh air as well as daylight. And the balconies are in fact size large enough to have a small dining table, which we do a lot actually here at this time of year. So other than that, that really covers the primary updates in terms of architectural considerations. This is another view, just quickly shows the impact of shrinking the building footprint, especially on the Riverwalk and along Bridge Street. And I think it creates an approach that really is that much more attractive in terms of the aesthetic. Thing we want to caution you on is we're still looking at some of the budget considerations. If dollars permit, we would like to have that 2-story storefront impact where we have the lobby connecting the entries on the 2 levels that Turner touched on.
Steve, not to interrupt, but this is also a great shot that shows the space between the Riverwalk, back of the and the river, and the effect of us pulling our building back further from the river, which was one of the concerns. But this is a great shot to show that there's folks that are calling this a tunnel, and it's really not, and this rendering is pretty accurate.
The other benefit of the 15-foot setback, excuse me, is to the extent possible, we'll have more of a landscape buffer where you have the single-story edge on the basement parking, and the size of the amenity terrace is likewise larger versus what we had for parking in the courtyard before. So I think that's a benefit also in terms of the character and appeal of the project. So questions are next, Charlie, I guess, in terms of what you were suggesting for an agenda?
At this point, I think it's appropriate to ask if the board has any questions. Otherwise, you know, I'd hand it over to potentially Dean from Prime to talk about some of the process issues and where he was at with the design of this project and where we stand from a business standpoint.
Okay, it's funny you should ask that, Charlie, because I actually, believe it or not, have some questions.
I would have never guessed.
Okay, so listen, I want to start this out quickly by saying, you know, we as board members are getting hammered from every side about this project and what's good or bad. And no matter what, frankly, no matter what you do, you're not going to do enough. No matter what we do, we're not going to do enough. I just want everybody to understand that that is sort of the fishbowl that we're all in. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything we can either, but it's very tough because both sides are very committed to and convinced of the righteousness of their position. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's how the world works. But anyway, I want to say that when we had that meeting in July 15th, and you came back, I'm not totally happy right now, I will say, but I was thrilled about the 15-foot setback because I think I've been saying that for a year. And you listened, and that's an important thing, and I think it does open it up. And I think that the materials change is significant. And I even said in that meeting that I thought this kind of stow brick and I know what the costs are. The costs are different. I'm assuming, Steve, that it's one of those products on the mezzanine level too, correct?
Yes, that's the
Yeah, right. That's fine as long as there's stow or foam masonry or whatever it is. That's fine. But so we've eliminated the elimination of the clapboard. Now means that nobody can call this a clapboard bunker anymore, number one. And number two, or that and the hardy board trims and all that is a good thing. I am understanding, and I'm a little, we see sort of on the first floor what's going on. I don't quite understand yet, and I'm sure they're being developed, how you're planning on doing, how many apartments of which type are on each floor. And it's odd that you went down 11 units, but only 6 bedrooms. So I'm assuming you have more 2 and 3 bedrooms and less 1 bedrooms or something like that. What's interesting to me, and I think you've done some pretty good stuff, really, though, what's interesting to me is that when we look at the previous plan with the 10,000 feet of space, and I'm trying to understand this and make sure I understand it properly, our ordinance would have called for 317 parking spaces based on the 10,000 feet at 250 square feet, not counting a restaurant, and 1.75 units per square foot, per apartment 2 for the first 10, etc. That was like 317, and you were providing it again 226 or 236 in a sense. Now, with all of the commercial space, if I do everything by our ordinance and I count 7,000 feet of that to be restaurant front end, that restaurant front end is subject to 1 space per 50 square feet. I'm just talking about this in general. You actually, and by your calculations, show that under the ordinance, you'd require 369 spaces. So one of my concerns is that we've lessened apartments, made the building a little smaller, but because, and I'm not saying the commercial is a bad use by any means, but we've increased the deficiency from 317 to 226 now to 369 to 226. That seems to exacerbate the parking issue. So I want to understand that because that's one of our big 5 criteria. I can't, as an example, I can ask you, but it's not necessarily part of our jurisdiction why Durkee Street is one way. And do you think your entrance and exit onto Durkee Street is going to work with it as a one-way street? Because Durkee Street, one-way traffic, although somebody else might bring it up as part of the GEIS, is not our purview. But the things that are mentioned in the findings in general, and I guess Durkee's mentioned that do affect us are parking, size, and so on. So one of my questions was, and I brought this up, I mean, I might as well do this now because, we're here to learn from each other, correct? And understand what the process is. One of my comments at the July 15th meeting right near the end, and I apologize for not hearing so well there. But anyway, am I correct that this relates to that the 17,900 square feet of commercial space includes 6,300 square feet of farmers market building? Is that correct, Turner?
It does include the farmer's market building. 6,300 is not. It's
3,400.
yeah, 3,400 square feet of farmer's market.
I'm sorry, say it again.
3,400 feet of farmer's market building.
To try,
Okay.
Ron, maybe try and simplify the change. We eliminated, I believe it was 11 apartments, and we added net 4,400 square foot of retail. So that was the net change.
Right, okay. Okay, so one of the problems when we do this, we take all this space, is that we end up with an ordinance-driven number of 369 spaces, which is up from the 317. And I think that you've got things you can say to us about, well, the restaurant doesn't really need that many spaces, or this doesn't need that many, or we've proven at the Hamlet as an example that 1.5 works for us for apartments. There's a concern though about the effect of parking on the community. And so I want to throw something out, might as well throw it out now because I did it at the other meeting. And one of my questions is, if you can come up with, including an alternate calculation, what would work for Prime if you kept the building on the, like you have it with all the underground parking, and I think now it's 198 spaces at the building, right? Between all of them, not 200, it used to be 200. I think it's now 198, 92 in the other parking lot. But if you kept the building in 198 spaces and didn't take the farmer's market building in the other parking lot, which would leave that open for public use and eventually potential to build someday in the future a parking garage if funds were available or a grant were available. I've talked about this at the July 15th meeting. I didn't get much of a reaction, but I feel that there are some of us on the board who've discussed this separately. I just want it to be thought about, or ask if you just thought about it. It would do several things. It would reduce, I guess, by only 3,400 feet, your commercial space and the required parking for it. It would keep you self-sufficient on that lot and probably allow you, you know, people keep saying, oh, all we really want is the original DRI, which was 45 apartments and 47,000 feet of commercial space, or vice versa, whichever was which. But I always say to them, yeah, but you want the 45 apartments, but you don't want the 47,000 feet of commercial space. Nobody wants that anymore. You guys don't want it anymore. You would build 47,000 feet, Dean, because it's too much to try and rent. So there's a trade-off that the more commercial space you get, the less theoretically apartments you would get. And I'm not asking you to go back to 45 apartments, because that also included 47,000 feet of commercial space. But I've been waiting for this meeting to bring this up. And I just want you to think about it, because we're early enough in this process now, and it doesn't in many ways affect your plans that you're talking about on this building.
Yeah, I guess, Ron, I can address that. First of all, if you looked at the parking impact of the original DRI vision, I guess it was called, it was higher than what we have now. I also don't understand your math, because we're adding 4,400 square footage of additional commercial at 250 a square foot, would have an additional 17 apartments, requirement for 17 more stalls. If we took off 11 apartments at 1.5 per stall, it's almost neutral. So I'm not sure where your math is coming up with.
Okay.
Now has 50 more. Yeah. So I'd like to understand what you're trying to say there?
Yeah, I'll explain it to you this way, Dean. And again, we're all trying to find our way to and you've been compromising, and I appreciate that. Okay, I'm not in any way ungrateful to that because I think that you've done some pretty good stuff. But when I look at, based on the ordinance, it says that you have 7,000 feet of restaurant front end. If so, that restaurant, I'm talking about the ordinance now. I'm not talking about the Hamlet calculation, I'm talking about the ordinance.
What,
The
but
ordinance
can you
calls-
define what you mean by ordinance? Because I think maybe that's where I'm confused.
Our zoning ordinance,
Yeah.
our actual zoning ordinance, right now, if you did this just like before, when you had the project, you said the ordinance calls for 317 spaces. We have an alternate calculation. We believe that 226 will do it. Okay, that's what you said before, based on 1.5 parking spaces per unit and 1 space per 300 square feet of commercial space that were 10,000 feet. The problem was in the other one, although you mentioned it some in here, you never really talked about a restaurant as part of that parking calculation for the 317. Had you put, say, 3,500 square feet of restaurant in that 10,000 feet, you would have increased it by however many, because the restaurant, and I'm not saying you need to do this exactly, but the restaurant space, the front end customer space, calls for 1 space per 50 square feet of space, 1 parking space. Now, that also includes, I didn't in my calculation put anything in for employees because our ratios do that. And where do these come from, these parking ratios? They come from not just somebody said, hey, this is a good idea, we'll make them do this. It's because it's based on what we think the density of that type of use would require, number of apartments, square footage of space, storage space, whatever it is. What I'm saying to you is that by increasing it and putting a 7,000 foot front end restaurant in, it could be anticipated that you would need, by our code, 369 spaces.
Right. Ron, I agree, but we're talking about fictitious uses right now. We don't have end users. That's how you have to do this. I don't know where a 7,000 square foot front end restaurant is coming from, but we're not proposing that right now. I believe that.
Well, it's in the, no, I got it from the application.
Yeah, Dean,
That's
so
in the
we do,
application.
that's what we have shown as a worst case, highest use.
Right, but our initial highest use had 6,000 square foot of front end restaurant, correct?
Maybe not 6,000, but it had like 3,500 or something. The original one certainly
But
had.
we're talking
had
about a
restaurant.
fictitious situation.
But
So if
the
I may-
original one,
If I may just.
and I'm not trying to,
You know,
wait,
one
hold
of the,
on. Oh, Charlie, wait, just listen. The original application said there's 10,000 feet of commercial space. It never said we had so many feet of restaurant because it would have been, we would have talked about that. You said in your application, we had 10,000 feet and we want to use Highlands at 1 per 300 square feet. That's what you said. And you
Ron,
cannot-
we went back and we calculated the parking per code, and in there we did account for a certain amount of restaurant space when we did that, and we put it in per city code and per our calculations.
Well, I'll, if that's in fact true, which I don't remember that, but if that's in fact true, at this point, what I can tell you is that I'm looking on page 1 of the McFarland Johnson, and it shows we previously proposed, but you were only saying you were going to do 1 space per 300, whether it was restaurant or not. And you're saying the same thing now. You're now saying you have 9,900 feet of commercial space, 7,000 feet of eating space, 1,000 feet of back of house space, and total of 17,900. So that's where
So the difference now, Ron, per city code and per our proposed parking, the difference now is city code would require 419 spaces for what we show. Per our calculation, we are calculating 277. We are providing 290.
No, well, you're also putting in the 50. Let's take out.
That
the 50 public
includes,
spaces.
all of those numbers include the 50
Can I try and
spaces.
can I step in for a second, please, and try to simplify this? We've added
Go ahead.
4,400 square foot of retail space. We've deducted 11 apartments. That's do the same calculation we did before. We added 4,400 square foot of space. You're saying it's 250 per square foot. That's 17.6 more parking spaces. We took out 11 apartments at 1.5 per stall. It's roughly a break even. Why are we using?
Well, because
that's the difference.
Dean,
folks.
it's on your
We
plan.
added 4,400 square feet.
It's on your plan.
Can we concentrate? Well, here's what we've changed. We've added 4,400 square foot of retail, and we've taken off 11 apartments. We did that as a reaction to try to mitigate everything to the fullest extent we can. We've been at this a year and a half. We went through geotechnical studies. We spent another $30,000 in engineering trying to figure out how to pull this building back and try to make it work. We went out. We found a tenant. Hopefully that will come in. That facilitated this change. The change is 4,400 square foot more retail and 11 less apartments. I'd like to hear. I mean, that's the change.
Well,
so now all of a sudden it's getting overly complicated and misconstrued, and I don't understand why.
Well, I'm using the figures from your plans, number one. Number two, it's not as simple as that, because back when you did your other, you didn't do 1 per 50 like it's supposed to be for restaurants, and you're adding almost 8,000 feet of restaurants. That's not, we can go back.
But Ron, we're talking about a fictitious situation. All we've done is added 4,400 square foot of retail space and taken off 11. Everything else is a
restaurant.
Everything else is a fictitious conversation.
Well, I'm sorry to say I don't see it that way, because I'm using the calculations from your plans where you show, not counting the 50 public spaces, 369 required by our code. Not counting the 50 public spaces, your plan shows 369 spaces required. Last time, however,
but if it's required for a fictitious situation.
So if I may just interject here just for one moment, and kind of bring this conversation and focus it a little bit. We've provided all this information with the parking calculation to the city council, who's lead agency. Chazen, the consultant for the city, is taking a look at this, and I believe they're either on the cusp or have issued a memo on their professional expert take on the parking. And what I think is missing here is, for secret purposes, we have to study this parking from the absolute worst case scenario of uses. This is a mixed use building, so you can't just say it's all going to have uses that are the lowest threshold. So Ron, I think if we take a look at that report from Chazen, it will clarify this fictitious worst case scenario. And we'll have to see whether or not the professionals feel as though there is sufficient parking within the downtown area to satisfy this. We internally believe that, but we're asking the city's consultants to take a look at that. The other aspect of this is there is a lot of emphasis that Ron is placing on the existing code requirements. Let's not forget that the finding statement and the FGIS and all professional consultants included in the review of this process has noted that the parking requirements in the city of Plattsburgh are antiquated and they need to be updated. So what you're looking at now is a modern parking plan. And so that's what we should be focused on. And I'd also like to hear from the other board members related to this and the project designs to see if we can get maybe a diversity of opinion or see where the other board members' heads are at, because that was so useful at the last meeting in June.
I'll speak. I don't really have an opinion, have not had a chance really to go through this. We've had less than a week to really go through all of this. There's a lot to be had here. We don't have all of the information. You're talking about the parking and you're saying, oh, there's this study that they're looking at it. So why are we even discussing it now until that's done? Dean's talking about fictitious, but we're taking what's in the application. Are you saying the application is fictitious? I understand what you're saying, but I think asking for our opinions of it right now are very premature.
Sure.
And I don't think the application as presented to us is complete. When I first saw the layout, I thought you got rid of one whole leg of the building because you put parking there, but evidently that's underground, but that's not really shown. There's no floors above it. We don't know that. I think the whole application that was just presented to us is incomplete, and we did not have near enough time to really review it and assess it against things like parking that Ron feels strongly about, as do I think all of us do.
No, I agree. And, we submitted for this board meeting, and I understand it was a lot of information. The city council and Chazen got that information at the same time. That is why you haven't seen their report yet. We certainly don't control their deliverables. But as far as feeling as though the application is incomplete, information in that regard would be helpful, because we can certainly explain or point you in the direction to answer your questions.
I have an opinion. I do think there's been this underlying dodging of the issue of what number are we using. I know that came up a long time ago. There's been a dispute about what number is the relevant number that we're using in this. And I feel like we have been kicking it down the road for several months and not making a decision on that. Scott, I mean no disrespect to you or Ron or anybody else on the board, but I would like to share my opinion on this. And I don't feel like it's premature from my perspective, because I have been able to pour over the materials. The parking at one point was a huge issue for me. Then it kind of became a non-issue. Then it was a huge issue again. I feel like I've kind of resolved myself with it. And the truth is, from my perspective, the city as a whole has made some pretty significant changes to several areas of parking throughout the city in close proximity to this site. And I feel that I'm ready to make a decision on this. I feel like I'm comfortable with what is being put before us. I have to say, I just want to put that out there because you had asked for our opinions, Charlie, and I think it's important that you kind of know where we are so you can address things or not address things, and like just information to be shared, right?
Thank you.
I think that I have weighed out all from my perspective, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but from my perspective, I've seen a lot, and I'm pretty excited about some of the things that they're doing around the city to mitigate the loss that we're going to feel from this project.
Thank you, Kelly. Ellie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, more or less what I said in the pre-meeting, I'm in the same board as Scott. I have not had enough time to review the paperwork, and I really don't feel comfortable commenting on it because I don't even know if it's incomplete. I glanced through it quickly, but it was about 350 pages of material, and I don't feel prepared to really have any definitive statements about how I feel about it because I don't know yet.
Sure. So one thing that will be helpful for us, as I mentioned, you will probably be getting a report from Chazen at some point quite soon. That will summarize their take on the parking. And I can't stress this enough. I think at one point it was mentioned that this might be a fictitious project. It is not. And the Chazen memo will very clearly, hopefully, lay out this idea of worst case scenario and how we have to evaluate it under SECRA. Because if you don't evaluate it in that manner under SECRA, it's a hole in your application. So that's something that I hope this board realizes. And also this board should lean on Corey to understand that that is the requirement of review. So what the report you'll get from Chazen should be an analysis of if everyone decides to park here at the same exact time and the highest uses are put in those commercial spaces, what's gonna happen, right? Because that situation will likely never occur. So to that extent, that will be forthcoming.
And Charlie, just to give you a brief update on that Chazen study, we did receive their finalized memorandum on the updated parking and traffic analysis just a few hours ago. So we will make sure to get that out to the full board tomorrow for your review and consideration.
And as far as incomplete applications go, please tell us how so, and that way we can figure out how to rectify that feeling that the board members have.
I think having, the one thing I heard tonight was that a better understanding of the building. So maybe if we were to supply floor plans of each of the floors, so you have a better understanding of kind of what goes where, is one thing that I heard. If there's anything else, we'll do our best to get it together for you.
Yeah, and Ron, speaking very quickly of the parking situation, you know, there's parking by the city code, and then there's the comprehensive view of the parking supply downtown, which is necessary to view it in its entirety rather than a dogmatic attachment to parking and off-street parking requirement regime that is very out of date and, you know, based on prevailing industry opinions, was never based on any type of scientific analysis in the first place.
All right, so Matt, would that mean then that the zoning board is authorized as part of this review to consider all of the parking downtown, which we've actually been told not to do, and that we should consider all of the parking plans and whether or not those spaces are adequate for the entire downtown? Because and that's really what this comes to, and I think it's part of the findings, and we are authorized anyway. The parking concerns me, not because, and Dean understands this, I'm not trying to, contrary to what people might think, I'm not really trying to stop this from happening, and I think there's many good things here. I'm concerned about how we make sure that the impact on downtown is able to allow other property owners to thrive just like you're going to thrive. And that's really what I'm after, and that's it. And it seems like the biggest one is this parking. I mean, we got the finishes on the building, we've got the setback done. We need to understand the parking and how we can ensure the rest of the community that we've protected their parking rights and abilities. And I'm not saying we can't, and I'm not saying we won't. And that's why I question the numbers, and the numbers are all over relative to incompleteness or whatever. What I've seen, I've looked through them quite a bit, and I'm still confused about some stuff. I don't think I need a whole bunch of floor plans, Dean or Steve or Kurt, that show every single apartment. If you said first floor, 10 3-bedrooms, 2 5-bedrooms, you know, for each
Yeah.
floor.
Well,
What you've
that
got
was it,
planned.
for Scott to understand that, and I
Yes,
understand.
yes.
He's-
What's
makes
happening
a lot
on
of
the,
sense
what's
based on the
happening on
site
the
plan.
mezzanine?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where is the restaurant? That's more of a concern, really. Where's the restaurant? Is the restaurant going to get its primary parking underground and on the surface lot, or are they going to be spilling over to the other one? Those kind of things. So I think that one of the things that we can help, Charlie, and I don't think we'll settle necessarily tonight about this quote incompleteness, is that I'm going to ask each of the board members what questions they have over the next week, because we're still examining this, and we will send them to you. I'll consolidate them, and as I get them, I'll send them to you. I'm not going to wait for one big event, and help guide you towards whatever questions we're discovering that we have about the process of the application.
Yeah,
Ron.
one thing, Ron, that you mentioned, and I think it's good to talk this out, is should we be considering the other spaces? Right now, in my opinion, you have a parking problem in downtown Plattsburgh. The problem is you can park anywhere you want, just about any time you want, because there's not traffic downtown, right? So part of what we, and the reality is with retail, the more there is, the more people that are down there, everybody else does better. It's just the nature of retail. So your idea of, and I don't know, Charlie, this is up to, you and Corey with the whole seeker laws and whatnot, but I do think that looking at all of the other parking, the parking that's underutilized now, that's being added, I think it's important, and it certainly was part of what the GEIS did because it did incorporate the other parking. But what is the privy of the board? And I understand, Ron, that was a great question. I don't know the answer to that either,
And I think, so there was a generic environmental impact statement done. And the reason why it was a generic environmental impact statement was because it studied a broad area with several different individual projects within it. And I think, and I know the city has this, is an analysis of all of that parking. While it might not be directly in your realm and jurisdiction, it's information that's in that GIS, and that we can work with the city to demonstrate again for this board. Now, taking it back to what is this board's specific jurisdiction related to parking, I think the answer is for the uses and the residential units, where are these people going to park, and is there enough parking? Now, that does not necessarily mean it has to be all in the basement or all above ground or all adjacent, but does the municipality in this urban environment support these uses from a parking perspective? And from what I understand from listening to the experts that relate to parking, that the answer is yes. And looking at the secret record, the answer is yes. It's hard from an applicant's perspective to listen to all these expert opinions related to parking and a demonstration that there is sufficient parking with this project going forward, and then to hear it, that it is still a concern that may or not be able to be overcome. So that's probably where the frustration is coming from. But I think if we pull out that information from all these experts, because I think we can all agree this has thoroughly been reviewed, that demonstrate parking in the downtown will be sufficient going forward with this project from a worst case scenario. And that is not rebutted in any way. It's really, really a tough pill to swallow if that's not accepted. So what we will do is try to pull that out again, synthesize it again, because we do constantly have to make things easier and more understandable here.
Hey, Charlie,
we'll focus on that.
Charlie, has there been a determination been made in a study that has opined that for this specific development that the parking is sufficient and adequate?
So you will be soon getting a report that is part of the GEIS process from Chazen. Our prior application that discussed our alternate method which is a reduction of the zoning requirements that is currently before the planning board. That was reviewed by, and Matt and Devin Turner, correct me if I'm wrong, through the building department opined on that, as well as, we provided that example for the board's review. But this Chazen document is probably, hopefully going to be what this board will be able to rely on.
And just to add a little more context, we'll certainly make Chazen's report available to the board, but at the next zoning board meeting, previously a member of Ethan, you all know, he gave a presentation to the planning board which summarized the findings of the community development office of the existing and future parking capacity needs within the city special assessment district, basically the downtown area. Now, we have not made that presentation available directly to the zoning board, but I think it would be helpful to have him present that information again so we can address any questions that members might have directly. And in addition to that, we also, because I know one or two members of this board have expressed concern about how the relocation of parking, not just the capacity issue, but how the relocation of parking to different areas within downtown will affect the time from somebody, getting into a spot and actually making it to their destination. So we have some additional information regarding that. And we can also provide that presentation to the board just to give you the full picture because it really do need to take it as a comprehensive.
But just to be clear, Ethan's report related to the parking throughout the entire downtown district. It's the replacement of the parking loss to the parking gain. I was specifically addressing Charlie's seeming frustration about parking, and I wanted to ask the question whether or not there is an actual study that discusses the feasibility of the parking specific only to this project.
So
yes, we just received that a few hours ago, and we'll get that to the board tomorrow.
Okay, I think that'll be very helpful.
I would also say that the original GEIS done by Chazen looked at this project, and it did summarize that it was feasible, and what they are doing is updating that, and that's what this deliverable that we are all waiting for is.
And it is difficult because the two go hand in hand, right? So what is the parking going to look like on site, but then also what's available elsewhere? And we'll marry the two. And
great. Yeah, and Turner, if you could forward specifically the sections of the Chazen original plan that reference specifically the feasibility of the parking for this project when you send over the additional information, so that, like Charlie said, we can marry those up. I think that'll be helpful for the board.
Okay, Matt, did you say that Ethan's presentation was based on a study by community development?
It's based on the parking counts that were conducted by the Community Development Office over the course of 2019.
Right.
It's married with the changes in parking capacity based on the various projects happening around downtown.
Right. I guess I would further Corey's question by saying, is there a study by somebody that's not part of the applicant? Because, and I'm not questioning certainly any integrity, but we have the applicant saying we did a study, the community development is part of the city, who's the applicant. We did a study and here's the presentation. I think what Corey's also asking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, would be a study by an outside consultant separate from the applicant.
Yeah, I was just looking for clarity on that issue.
Trust the numbers that we're providing, Ron, or?
Ron, I was just trying to get clarity on the issue to Charlie's seeming frustration about the parking issue. And I think, they're indicating that the Chazen study hopefully will be that sort of analysis.
Yeah. So whatever you've got, we'd like to see, I guess is the point. I guess before we go any further, we've heard from a couple of board members at least that are, and Kathy's not here right now. She's not available anyway, but she'll be watching this recorded meeting to know what happened, and she'll be here next month. I think what we want to discuss is the fact that we've got an application. We're going to have some questions. I'll send them to you as soon as I get them. You know some of them already about just understanding what's where in the building. I want to understand better how we can define these spaces and get a handle on the parking. And I'll put some of this in an email. I'm asking everybody on the board as quickly as possible to do more review of the plans. I would like you to consider what I mentioned before about separating the two lots. I don't think you're going to, but I'd like you to consider it anyway. So I guess what the next next thing to decide is where we're at in this process. We're waiting for, if I'm correct, new seeker information, new GEIS information. Even though you're working on your plan, that could affect your plans. Is that correct?
Our plans are pretty much final as they are now, so we do owe you some of the seeker information.
Do you know when we're going to have the new GEIS information, whether it's amended or whatever it is?
You talking about the finding statement from the council?
Yes.
Within the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Our next meeting is the 21st. We have Labor Day weekend. We got school starting for people. I'm going to assume that we would want to work on this together by emails as much as we can and look at trying to have a public hearing on the 21st of September. I don't see how we can, I'm just being realistic about us having time to look at stuff, having time to answer questions, get more information together, the findings, the amended findings, whatever they're going to be, that we look at having them opening up a public hearing. And we don't know yet if that's going to be a public hearing at City Hall, on Zoom, or what yet. If the executive order comes out, we would have it on Zoom just like this. Does anybody on the board, I'm going to ask you, any way that we could have a special meeting before that to do this public hearing, and then you'll be able to understand what's going on?
Yes.
Scott, Ellie?
I will make myself available.
Yeah, I'll make it work.
21st?
I thought, excuse me if I'm wrong, but is that a regular scheduled board meeting on the 21st, or would that be a special meeting?
That's our scheduled board meeting.
So I would only suggest having a public hearing before that. And I only say this because oftentimes when there are other agenda items, this meeting tends to go quite late, and we would want the members of the public to kind of have their own dedicated meeting. That said, certainly it is the board's decision, and it also, allows us another meeting to kind of work and refine things.
Well, tonight we spent about 8 minutes on the shed, but I understand because we've had other meetings where we've had an hour and a half of stuff before you, Charlie. So what I can tell you, there's a couple of things going on right now. The first Wednesday is the 2nd. That means that the 21st correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, the 21st of this month, right? This coming Friday?
Yes.
The applications for the county are due, our applications are due, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
I don't know the answer
so
to that,
Charlie, we're gonna know on the 21st what we have, and we will either put them after you, so that the public doesn't have to wait, but we're gonna know on the 21st of this month, this coming Friday, what applications we have for September, and at that point, we can start to decide about a separate public hearing or not, if in fact, we may have one application for a fence for 10 minutes, okay? I think it's just, we've got a lot of work to do between now and you've got a lot of work to get stuff out. so that the public's not confused for the public hearing. We've got to get it up. We'll work together. If we need to do it, we'll try and figure out when we can do it. I would assume it'd be a Monday, like the 14th. But again, that's a week before our other one. So let's, I guess what I would propose is we don't set it tonight. We wait to see what we have for applications on the 21st, on Friday. And then as soon as we know, we can talk about it and get it decided.
And would we anticipate then having that public meeting? Let's say it is on the 21st, if we don't have a special meeting, and then we wouldn't, the resolutions and all would be drafted after that, and a vote would be the following
In
month?
October.
What's
Yes. That's what I think we're looking at. And I think that's as realistic as a timeline as we could get to, it's not a simple issue. I know we appreciate your patience here and we've been working the process. I think we want to, I don't think anybody wants to be accused of not being thorough. And I'm sure we're not, I'm sure we're thorough now, but I mean, we have a new set of circumstances, we have a new plan, and we're going to allow a new public hearing. Let's make sure it's right.
Right.
That's all. And we'll work as best we can to make it as efficient and timely as possible.
Well, we appreciate that. So the deliverables, just getting out of this meeting, Scott, so you can understand the building better and we can make it more clear. We'll provide the floor plans, above the garage area.
Yeah.
Idea what's going on. It sounds like we're going to have the Chase and traffic study in the next day or so. And then Matt, you're going to update the findings.
Yeah.
And that should be done within a week or so. And then while you guys all chat amongst yourself, I know, Scott, you said you didn't have enough time to review the documentation. If there's anything else that you guys deem that it's incomplete, if you could please just send it to us as quick as you can, and we'll try to get it back to you as quick as we can.
And also, when would you like that information so that you have sufficient time before the 21st?
Yeah.
A month ago.
I do have something. I'm sorry. Dean, you said, well, yeah, we don't know if that's what's going to be. This is as theoretical as the pandemic questions, right, Charlie? But I'm talking about the restaurant, what the uses are. If in fact you don't know, and if this square foot breakdown that we have on the front of the letter now is only an example, as opposed to like hard facts numbers from a brewery or something, we should know that, because part of my reaction to this was say, 7,000 feet of this. And I'm just mentioning that. So
yeah, we just, unfortunately right now, we don't have a secure defined tenant. So it's really the same fictitious scenario we had before, but we're just adding 400.
To Charlie's point, Ron, what those are thresholds, right? Those are the maximum amounts that would be considered in this project.
And
so,
that's good.
Yeah.
And that's good. Okay. Can I ask one other question, just separate, and it's part of our concern. It's just I've heard so much about this, and maybe Charlie, you can explain it to me. I'm sure you're familiar with. I'm bringing up. We've asked for several times a copy of whatever is the pilot, which is not the one contained in the GEIS. I believe it's changed since that February version. And I'm assuming that the pilot itself gets altered when the plans get altered. But can somebody clarify something for me? I hear over and over and over and over again, if the project doesn't get completed, or if they can't fill it and they abandon it, the county owns the project. Is that true?
No. So first of all, the pilot agreement is before the county IDA, so it is not the jurisdiction of this board. That said, the pilot is, from my understanding, I'm an attorney in our office who deals with IDA, is handling the pilot issues. But no, so the way a pilot works in this instance would be that, you know, and someone may have to correct me if I'm wrong again, because this isn't my expertise, and maybe Corey knows about it, but it's a lease back, right? So the land is leased, and that makes certain financial incentives available. But then there is an agreement through the IDA that if anything is to ever happen, the property then would not be in the IDA's realm. It would then auto back to Prime. So it's really just a mechanism to help the financial incentives that are at play.
It is called. Yeah.
But at no case would, it's my understanding, would the county own the property for any significant amount of time, and certainly if something was not done. But you know, I can get that information from you. You know, from Dan Hubble in our office is working on it, and you might also be able to just get it straight from the county as well.
Right. That the reason I asked, and I know that it's not part of the 5 criteria, is because it's part of the GEIS and talked about in the GEIS, and therefore when we're doing our findings, one of the things we're looking at, just like pandemics, is pilots. And so I was just asking you to understand it, because I've heard that statement that if Prime abandons the project, the county owns it, what do they do with it? That's what I've heard, and I want to understand if that's true.
That is my understanding that is not true.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Well, listen, I think that we got some stuff accomplished. We know what we need. We're working towards September, and we'll figure out once we know on Friday, the 21st, what we have for applications. If there's 1 or 2, they'll go. If they're short little ones, we'll do them quickly in a half an hour, and then we'll go to the public hearing. I don't know where it's going to be, if it's going to be Zoom or at City Hall. Okay, do you guys have, I mean, I think you've done 10 on a positive note. I love the setback. I love the material, and I think the materials are great. So, and I like moving that to Durkee Street. I question Durkee Street's one way, but I think you've been making some compromises. We just need to work on this. Thank you very much. Is the board, anybody else on the board have something?
Yeah, a question for Matt. The presentation from Ethan that was given to the planning board, if that was done to the whole, was that done to the whole planning board? And if so, then is there a recording that we could just watch and get a gist of it?
There is a recording that you can watch. I believe it was the July, perhaps the June planning board meeting. I don't recall specifically which one, but we can get that info for you. The reason I was recommending that Ethan present directly to the zoning board is that if you guys have questions as he's going through the presentation, he's there and he can address them as they come up. Or if you prefer to watch it in advance and bring your questions to the next meeting, we can do it that way. But my personal feeling is that would be more effective if he presented, directly to you live during the meeting.
I understand what you're saying. On the flip side, our time is a little tougher being volunteers, and if we can watch some of it or all of it at our leisure, that's always a little easier to do.
I agree, Scott. And if there is any way for us to get a video of that, that would be really great. And then we can maybe email questions if we have them.
Yeah, we can do that. And just one point of clarification, the presentation that was given to the planning board was strictly based on the issue of parking capacity within the downtown. We put together a second presentation based on, time from the average parking space to an average destination, which is of course another concern based on the reshuffling of capacity. But that one we have not had an opportunity to present to the planning board. So depending on what information we get to with that board at their upcoming meeting, we may need to present that information to the zoning board live during the meeting. But again, if you'd like to watch the previous presentation beforehand on your own time, certainly do that as well.
And if you could possibly give us time frames within that meeting would be appreciated.
Sure, it's I would say no more than a 10 or 15 minute presentation.
And also what might be helpful is maybe some way we can get a clip pull it out and post it on the webpage so members of the public could also watch it as well as a refresher.
Yeah.
So that we can prepare for the public hearing.
Yeah, we can isolate that, make a direct video and send that to the board so you guys don't have to, jump around on the live stream recordings.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So Ethan will send that out to us, I guess, and put it on the city website.
Yep.
Great. All right. Does anybody on the board have any more stuff, comments, questions? Before we get done?
Hey,
Does
Ron,
anybody
just
from
for
Prime?
Ron, for the benefit of the
Yeah.
public, is it your intent to hold a public hearing at the September meeting? Are you going
We're
to schedule
discussing it.
now?
Yes, we would schedule it.
Okay.
Right. We have time to announce it because our timeline generally in general for meetings is that we would be having on the 21st of August, we would know what we have for applications. And after that, for the we had plenty of time to put the notice in the paper, etc. when we advertise the general meeting, which is a period before. But once we know that we're going to have when we're going to have the public hearing, let's assume for now it's the 21st, we'll make it simple. We would put a notice about that in the paper, a press release of some kind or something, so the public knew it. We would also put it up on the city website before even we do the legal ad, so that word is out. They're pretty efficient on social media of getting it out once you let them know.
Okay. I'm not sure if I want to make sure we're clear. So is it your intent that between this meeting and the next meeting, you may schedule a public hearing? You're not going to schedule a public hearing right now for the September meeting, but that at some time between now and the September meeting, you intend to schedule a public hearing?
Don't know yet. If there are a lot of applications for the September meeting, there's some discussion that we might have a public hearing the week before.
Okay, then what I suggest is that there be a resolution of the zoning board authorizing the chairman to schedule a public hearing in between the meetings, if that is going to be your intent. Either schedule,
Okay.
either move to schedule a public hearing now by resolution, or pass a resolution authorizing the chairman to schedule a public meeting at such other time, provided that, due notice is provided pursuant to the city code.
All right, so let me ask you this, board members. Do we want to just say that we're going to have a public hearing on the 21st of September? Or do we want to talk about the fact that if there are a bunch of applications for the September 21st meeting, that I have the ability to schedule a meeting on the 14th of September? I'm going to pick that as the only date available. First of all, is everybody available? Is everybody available, A? And B, do we find it necessary to have it before the 21st?
I think, Ron, the idea is that, correct me, Corey, we don't necessarily need to have a resolution to have one at our normal meeting. That's a matter of course. But he's asking us to give you authorization after the 21st or after the end of this week to make a decision and schedule a public meeting earlier if required based on applications. Am I correct, Corey?
Well, I'm being a little bit hyper technical here because we are holding a new public hearing. I think that the board should move to hold the public hearing, and that should be a resolution of the board that is duly adopted by the board. So whether you want to authorize the chairman at some later date to schedule the public hearing, providing due notice pursuant to code, or you want to actually schedule the public hearing for the 21st, I think that you should take an affirmative action to do that. Not only does it protect the board legally, but it also informs the public about what your intent is if they are observing the meeting right now.
But I might
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
Have a comment, Charlie?
to make this a little clearer, I might suggest having a special meeting on the 14th. Allow us to present this additional information to you, so then you are not seeing it for the first time at the public hearing. And then
Yeah, that
have,
won't give them enough time to schedule a public hearing though, Charlie.
it would be 7 days. Okay. Just a thought.
Yeah. How about this? I'd like to make it a little, I'm just gonna tell you that I don't know if we're gonna have, because also this is coming around with this, when we might be in City Hall, might not be in City Hall, all that other stuff, which is gonna change on the 5th. Perhaps, we do need I want to do a motion and a vote to open a public hearing regarding Prime's special use permit applications. And if so, if you feel, and I think that we ought to just leave it for the 21st. That's my opinion. Now, that's some months from now, but it gives us time to really get this together. The public, we can do it. We'll just be more prepared. The public will be more prepared. The stuff will be out there. Nobody can say that they didn't get a chance to look at it in the public and it just got put up on the web, any of that. So I guess the first resolution I'm looking for by the board is a motion to open a public hearing in September for the Prime application. And I guess I'm going to say that I don't see any point in having it a week earlier. That's my opinion.
Ron, if we're getting information from everybody in the next, between the next, say, 48 hours and week and a half, we're talking about the building plans and the parking study that was done. We want to watch this video that Ethan is going to send us. With that stuff, being able to digest that, plus giving us a week to digest the public opinion if we did hold it on the 14th instead of the 21st, would allow us to come to the table on the 21st and I think have richer dialogue without having all of the public comment on that same night. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does, because you could notice the public hearing for the 21st now, still hold a special meeting on the 14th, so you don't have to worry about making a decision on the 14th, whether you're going to have a
Right.
public.
Right. And it would give us a week to digest all that information from them.
I don't see it, yeah, but except that I don't see us voting on the 21st. If you think that we're going to have a public meeting on the 14th and vote on our findings.
No.
And
No, I wasn't suggesting voting. I wasn't suggesting voting. I was just suggesting that we would be able to bring to the table on the 21st the information that we gathered from the public a week earlier so that we can have richer dialogue on the 21st instead of trying to do it all.
Whatever it's worth, Ron and board, to the extent it changes your mind, I am not available on the 14th.
I'm sorry, Corey, I didn't hear you say it again.
I said, to the extent it matters, I am not available on the 14th. I have another meeting on the 14th.
About the 15th.
That matters.
I'm not available on the 14th, the 15th, or the 16th. I'm available on the 18th. If it's going to be in the evening.
I'm just going to tell you, though, that when we get all this stuff and we digest it and it then gets put up on the website and so on, it's 1 week difference. And I don't feel like it's, I just feel like I need time. We all have lives. We all have stuff we're doing. If this is an important matter, it's my opinion that I'm just as interested to hear people on the 21st. We're not going to vote anyway. And then we can start to understand it. And then we can work our way. Then we'll have a month till the October meeting. This is not all said and done and everything's right. So I think that we need to, and I don't think we want to protect everybody, including Prime. I think this is for Prime's benefit also, that if we rush this through, something's going to happen, or we're going to get an application where some of us aren't happy with, or the public's not happy, or we're not gonna have a question answered, and this way we're being thorough. So I guess my opinion is that I don't see where having the public comments a week before. First of all, I'm not gonna close it on the 14th. I'm not gonna have it for an hour and go, okay, closed.
That's not what Kelly is suggesting. Kelly is just suggesting having a meeting of the board without a public hearing on the 14th, or whenever Corey or someone else from his firm might be available, and then having the public hearing on the 21st. So it would just be a board meeting on the 14th.
To
But
Charlie's point,
Corey's
my
not
concern
available.
is that this board take an affirmative action to schedule the public hearing. If you intend for it to be on the 21st, then I think someone should move a resolution, and it should be put to a vote to schedule the public hearing. If the board wants to hold a meeting, a special meeting for purposes of board discussion, deliberation, or to get more information from the applicant between now and the 21st, by all means, I have no issue with that. It's my discrete concern relates to the scheduling of the public hearing, and I want to make sure that either we schedule the public hearing or that the chairman be authorized to schedule the public hearing.
Also, if we schedule something outside of the 21st, I think we should make sure that Kathy will also be available.
Yeah, I just don't feel like I don't think that there's justification to do it. I'm sorry, but I think that we've got a lot to do. Look, Prime did the best they could to get us what they had for an application on the 10th. Some of us couldn't even get to it. We're going to get all kinds of other stuff. We've got parking to watch. I agree. I guess what I'm going to tell you is that I'm looking for a motion from somebody for the zoning board to have a public hearing regarding the Prime application on September 21st. That's what I'm looking for.
Before we do that, let me throw one other possibility out. One of the reasons we're talking a special meeting is to make a meeting specifically for Prime. Is it possible if we get any other applicants to have that, say, the next day on Tuesday, the 22nd? Joe?
Sure. Right. Let's see what it is. Well, let's see what it is. It might be one shed and it takes 10 minutes. So we can make that decision well before then. After we get I think that's a good point, Scott. After the 21st of August, the end of business on the 21st, we'll know what applications we have for September. We can then decide whether we want to have a special meeting in September for the applications so that the September 21st meeting can be devoted to Prime, or if there's one fence, we'll probably do it. Okay? Good point, Scott.
All right, so I'll make a motion as Corey would like us to, and as you requested, Ron, that we schedule a public hearing for the Prime project, the Durkee Street mixed-use development for the 21st of September during our normal meeting times. And actually, I think we should start the meeting at 6:30. There really is no reason for a pre-meeting.
I don't disagree. Seconded by,
I'm sorry, Scott, you cut out on the date that you mentioned.
On September 21st, starting at 6:30 p.m.
Are we not having a pre-meeting even if there are other applicants on that
there
date?
won't be other ones. Oh, yes, Scott, that's true. We could, if we have one, we're gonna have a pre-meeting.
Okay.
Just started at 7.
Okay, second.
Scott, right?
Okay, I'll revise the motion to have the pre-meeting at 6:30. The public hearings start at 7 p.m. on September 21st.
I'm looking for a second. Seconded. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have 4 of us that have voted aye. I'm going to do a roll call. Ron, yes. Ellie?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Kelly? Kelly?
Yes.
Okay.
It's confusing.
Okay, so we have scheduled we're gonna have at our normal meeting, we will have a public hearing. We don't know where it is, whether it's gonna be Zoom or at City Hall. Public hearing on the 21st of September regarding the Prime application. And we will post as much information as possible before that. If we find on the 21st of August that we have more than one small application or two tiny little fences or whatever, simple area variances, pardon me, we will schedule a separate special meeting for the other applications and only hear Prime. Either way, we'll have a 6:30 meeting, pre-meeting, at which point we can discuss all things Prime anyway. And then 7 o'clock main meeting, and the public will be invited to both, actually.
Thanks for
Okay?
indulging.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Prime, thank you very much. We'll be talking to you. We'll be sending you more questions, and I'm sure we'll be getting more information. I appreciate your diligence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, very much. Thank you, Steve and Turner. Deb, thank you.
Ron,
Thank you, Deb.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Zoning board, don't go yet. Okay? Thank you. We're just getting, Charlie, you want to hang out? Or? There we go. All right. We still have some of the applicants showing up, but anyway, does anybody have any other business? New business, old business? If not, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Unless
motion.
Corey, do you have
to
anything
adjourn.
we should do? Okay, I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did.
Seconded by
Second.
Ellie. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. You can vote on this, PJ. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Ron, can you hang on
Talk to you
one
soon.
second?
Yeah,
I want to talk to you for a second before you hang up.
okay,
Right.
okay, I won't hang up.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, all.